Hello and welcome to another live midday recipe with me, Chef Dave from the Vegan Chef School. So today is a really exciting recipe that I'm going to be sharing with you guys because it's burgers. It's burgers! Everybody loves a good vegan burger, but there are lots of terrible vegan burgers out there. And I have had my fair share, as I'm sure that you have too. So burgers can be really great, but there are some recipes where they don't really hold together. You try and turn them over in the pan and they fall apart. You put them between two bits of bread roll, a batch, a cob, whatever you call it, bap, one of those things. And then you go to put it into your mouth, and what happens, you squish it together and the vegan burger goes out the sides. It's pretty rubbish, right? So I decided that I wanted to create a vegan burger that wouldn't do that, that was much more solid and would hold together a lot better. So this is my recipe for that sturdy burger. It is one that can go onto the barbecue as well. You have to cook it here first and then you can take it and put it onto the barbecue or a griddle pan. So we've got a griddle pan here today that we will be using. You guys can ask me questions. I've got it up on my computer here so I can see all of your questions coming in. Ariel, thank you for joining me again. It's really lovely when people come back and we get to know you a little bit. Gloria, thank you for joining me again. Hello. And Ingrid, thank you for joining me. So there is, as always, a rainbow somewhere in my kitchen because I always have a rainbow in my kitchen, don't you? Don't you? If you don't have one in your kitchen, then I think that you should rectify that issue today, please. So you do have to guess where the rainbow is. Let's see who gets it first. We've got some really good rainbow spotters actually on this show. So, you know, you're going to have to be like pretty good to keep up with them. Okay, so on to our recipe. As I said, it's a sturdy burger. It is one that is quite meaty and, you know, it's quite, how can I say it? It's quite, like, the texture is really very good. So with some vegan burger recipes, they can be a bit pasty. If you guys have ever made, you know, a bean burger where you have to blend all of the beans, then you'll know what I'm talking about. It isn't very nice. Whereas with this one, we're going to add some really interesting ingredients that you wouldn't necessarily think of putting into a burger, and it's going to create a really lovely texture. So it isn't going to be pasty at all. It's going to be, how can I say it? It has that, how can I say it? Right, let me think of my words. Okay. It has more pushback. So, you know, you bite into it and it actually stays in that shape. It doesn't just like all like, you know, like come together or anything like that. So it's a really nice firm texture. Okay, so Gloria said I spotted it, but I won't say. Well done, Gloria. Quick off the mark. Sean, hello again. Karen, thank you for joining us again. Chris, you found it. Okay, so someone tell me, where is the rainbow? Andrea is one of our graduates, so thank you for joining us. And Harry, good afternoon. So just to say, guys, yesterday we did have Arpita sharing her dosa recipe with a coconut chutney on the show. So she will be teaching a recipe for us every Monday. So from now on, we're going to have Arpita Mondays. How awesome is that? So join us every Monday and then she will share a recipe with you guys. Okay, so on to today's recipe. So we've got a nice big pan here because we want to give the stuff that's going to go in it, we want to give it lots of space. That will help it to cook a bit quicker. So I'm just going to put that on quite a high heat there. We've got a couple of other comments. So Trisha said hello from Liverpool again. Hello. Thank you for coming back. It's always lovely when you guys come back. If you do make any of the recipes that we're making here today, that we're showing you, then please do let us know how you get on. Pictures are always welcome. We did have somebody share a picture of the chocolate fudge cake that we made the other day that they had made at home. It was half eaten. That's fine. In fact, it's quite flattering that you haven't had a chance to take your photo of it before you've actually devoured half of it. That's a very, very, very good compliment. Okay, so, right, we've got our pan on here and it is warming up. Debbie says, good morning from Toronto. Good morning. Good morning. Okay, so, got our pan on a high heat here. Our first ingredient will be 1 tablespoon of oil. So, I'm just going to guess that here. And our second ingredient is 200 grams of onions. So you may wonder why in this recipe I said 200 grams of onions rather than 1 large onion or 2 medium onions or something like that. And that is because in this recipe the precision will matter. And in one country, a medium onion might be this size, and in another country, medium onion might be that size. So it's good to have this level of precision with this recipe. You don't have to have it with all, but you know, when it's needed, I try to include it. We've got another, a couple of comments in here from Karen. She said nom nom. Absolutely. Dipti from Nairobi. I think you're the first person from Nairobi that we've had on the show. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Michael says, good morning, Day. Vegan burgers, yum. Exactly. So in here, I have 200 grams of onions. My onions were quite small, so it was good that I knew the grammage. So I knew how much to cut up. So I have just roughly chopped them. You don't need to go any smaller than that. You know, and I see people chopping onions and, you know, they've got their onion and their knife, and they're going like this, and I'm looking at their fingers and thinking, please don't get any closer, you know, and you're trying to like get them really, 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 really tiny, and you're getting really, 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 really close to your fingers. With a knife, usually that isn't sharp enough, so it gets a bit slippy. But with this recipe, you don't have to cut them small. You don't have to cut them small, so just roughly chopped like that, which is great because it also saves you time and fingers. So once this gets up to a good heat, we can pop these in. And so I can test how hot this oil is, and I just pop a little bit in, a little piece in. And then once I see some bubbles, once I can see like it's starting to fry, then I'll throw the rest of it in. So that's a good tip for you there. In here we have 20 grams of garlic. I'm actually using smoked garlic because it's all I have at the moment. Not a bad problem to have, not complaining at all. But yes, 20 grams of garlic. And once again, see if I can show you guys this. I sliced it, but not finely. Not finely. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do that. So don't worry about, you know, trying to get it really, really thin. We're going to be frying these veggies, and then we're going to be blending them. So it doesn't matter if they're thin. That's fine. Don't just chuck in a whole clove though. I mean, you know, chop it up a bit. Chop it up a bit. Okay, so I can see that our onions are starting to, or the piece of onion that I popped in there is starting to bubble. So we can pop the rest of that in there. And we can also pop our garlic in there. So with the garlic, you know, feel free to add more or not put so much in. I'm not sure who would want to put not so much in. Like usually whenever I ask vegans if they like garlic, it's a resounding yes that almost deafens me. So I'm pretty sure that you guys are in the yes, I love garlic camp. I don't know. Are you? Hands up who loves garlic. Or, oh, I know. Can I get a heart? Can I get a heart for the people that love garlic? Okay. So Fee says, good evening from Goulburn, Australia. Did I say that right? Goulburn. And Tom joined. Hello Tom. David and Monique, garlic is life. Here you go. So we are going to cook these on fairly high heat, medium to high heat. And we just want the onions to get to the point where they are a bit translucent. That's what we're looking for. So we're going to pop our mushrooms in at the same time. So in here I have oyster mushrooms. So these are different to the king oyster mushrooms that we used the other day. These are just regular grey oyster mushrooms. Very, very tasty. And then these are shiitake mushrooms. You don't have to use these mushrooms. You can use any mushrooms. It's just that these are what I have in my fridge in my kitchen at the moment, so I'm just kind of like freestyling and you know, using whatever I have really. You guys can use button mushrooms, portobello mushrooms. I could go through naming all of the mushroom types, of which there are many. If you have never seen it before, Google lobster mushroom, which just looks amazing. Like, it's bright orange. And also cordyceps. Oh my god, cordyceps have the most amazing flavour. Many of you might know that from, you might know cordyceps just as a kind of like supplement because it's quite trendy now. But you know, the actual cordyceps, the actual mushrooms themselves are so tasty. Really, really tasty. Gloria said, I have to use it sparingly. Is that because you and your taste, or is it the other people in the house? Because, you know, sometimes that's the thing. Bridget, hello. Thank you for joining me, Bridget. Okay, so if the pan dries out, you can add splashes of water to it. And that is why I have specified just 1 tablespoon of oil in this recipe, because it's a really, really good thing just to practice this method. And so this just means that you don't need to use as much oil. So I'm just roughly chopping our mushrooms, some of which are quite big, and we can use the stalks from the shiitake. Absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. In some recipes, I like to remove the stalks because the stalks of shiitake can be quite chewy. But in this one, it's fine because we're going to be blending it anyway. Again, just really roughly chopping them. And we can just pop that into our pan. So what we're trying to do here is we're trying to get some more of the flavour out of the mushrooms. So we're going to sear the mushrooms. So we do want to see those mushrooms browning. And you can see that my pan is already quite crowded. So, you know, you do need to use a large frying pan with this. What we don't want to see is, you know, using a small frying pan and having things like piled on top of each other, and then it can get quite sweaty. There can be like a lot of moisture. And then the mushrooms, they can go quite soggy because of all of that moisture in it. You know, they're not very nice when they're like that. And you know, it can be quite difficult for them to get seared, to get brown. But the brownness is that's where the flavour is going to come from. That's really going to maximise the mushroom flavour in this. So Ankita, is that how I say it? I hope so. Lovely name. Hello from India. Hello. Where in India? Robert said, will this recipe work without mushrooms? So Robert, I have a question for you. Is it because you don't like mushrooms, or is it because you're allergic to them? So let me know. Because depending on your answer, I will have a different opinion. I will have a different answer for you. Okay, so they are browning nicely, but I can see already that the oil is really starting to disappear. So I will just add another splash of water. It's just a splash, no more than that. You don't want to drown it. You don't want to add too much water that's going to bring that temperature down, because we still want to sear it. All that's happening when I add those splashes of water is it's kind of like deglazing the pan, making it a bit less sticky on the bottom so that we're not going to burn anything, basically. But it's not going to stop the mushrooms from searing, from getting nice and brown. Okay, so questions from the floor, please. Do you have any questions for me? Robert says, it's because I don't like them. I've tried many, many varieties, but not found one yet that doesn't invoke my gag reflex. Thank you for that very, basically I just got a really horrible picture in my head. Thank you for that, Robert. Very, very appreciated. So the reason why I asked that is because in this recipe, the mushroom taste isn't really going to hugely come through. All that's going to come through is the umami-ness of it. Sorry, let me just do that. I think you guys can see me a bit better there. There we go. Right. Okay, as I was saying, with these mushrooms, the umami-ness is going to come through. That's all. It isn't going to be that mushroom flavour because we're going to add other ingredients that are going to really kind of balance it out, and there's going to be lots of different like layers going on in there, so you're not going to be able to taste the mushrooms. I promise you, I promise you, I promise you. Now, this is a recipe that I have demoed at various vegan festivals around the country, and before I get into the recipe, I actually say to people, who doesn't like mushrooms? And I get people to stick their hand up, and then at the end they taste them and I ask them, can you taste the mushroom? And they all say no. They all say no, and that is no word of a lie. I would not lie to you. Give it a go. If you're allergic to mushrooms, then you can exchange the mushrooms for aubergine. Aubergine would be really, really good in this recipe as well because it's got that meatiness to it. You just got to make sure that it doesn't get too soggy. So really, really similar. Well, yeah, exactly the same process. You know, frying it, making sure that it gets nice and seared as well. So this is almost done. I probably lost a few comments whilst I was rabbiting there, so please do repost any questions that you've thrown at me that I haven't been able to see, because just so you know, I can see like about 2 comments at a time, and if people like come into the group, then you know I can't see the previous comments. Takeshi, lovely name. Jen, oh no, everyone's speaking so quickly. I can't keep up. Okay, Robert says, okay, you've convinced me to give it a go, but I really like the idea of using aubergine. I'm going to try both. That's a very, very good plan. And you can use them together as well. I've used them together in this recipe. Okay, so this is almost done. Almost. And so, yeah, I just wanted to say about this recipe, it's great for burgers, but you can also make it into meatballs. So you've got 2 recipes in one there. If you're going to make it with something like, you know, like tomato meatball pasta, this is really, really lovely. Make the balls as they are. Do put them in the oven like we're going to get them to dry out, and then make your tomato sauce separately. And just before you're about to serve it, then put the meatballs into the tomato sauce, and then with the pasta, etc, etc. Because if you put the meatballs in too quickly into your tomato sauce, then they may go quite soggy, and you want them to still be a bit firm. Okay. Right. So there we go. Just see if I can show you guys how cooked this is. So there is some nice browning going on the mushrooms and on the garlic. The onion is translucent. That's what we want. That's going to be nice and soft, so it should blend down really well. So we'll pop it into our bowl here. The bottom of the pan has got a bit sticky, so I'm just going to try and get that off as much as I can, because the next thing that we will want to do with the pan is to fry the burgers in them. So I just want to get rid of as much stickiness as possible. There we go, and using our trusty hand blender. You know me and a hand blender. I love a good hand blender. Kate said, may have missed it, but can you freeze them, please? Not that I have a problem eating them all in one go, but my waistline might. Okay, so first of all to say that the burgers are pretty damn healthy. But yes, it's a very, very good point. It's something I was going to mention later, but we'll talk about it now. Yes, they're great for freezing. So one of the things that I've done before is when I'm doing this recipe, I've actually done you know, double the amount of the recipe or even 4 times the amount of recipe. And that's known as batch cooking, because then what I do is I go through the whole thing, I cook them, and then I freeze them. So I freeze them in one layer, and then once they're frozen, you can just pile them on top of each other and freeze them stacked. That's fine, but in the first instance you want to freeze them in one layer, and then that means that literally, you know, you've got your own vegan burgers that you can just grab from the freezer and into your oven. Like, that's amazing. I think that that's really, really cool. And you know, I personally think that these are nicer than any of the processed ones that I've tried, but you know, I might be biased. Okay, so let's give this a good blend. Just a word about hand blenders. I always recommend that you use a hand blender that is over 500 watts. It doesn't have to be expensive, but as long as it's over 500 watts, then it can do a lot more things, and the motor won't burn out quickly, basically. So get one that is over 500 watts. This one's been with me for a long time, and it's had loads of use, and it's still going. Okay, and you can see there that I'm moving the blender around as it's on, just so that I can make sure that I get all of those ingredients that are in there. Okay, there we go. It's well blended now, and it's really, really soft, so it's really very, very easy to blend. Very easy. Okay, so, I missed that question. Karen asked, can you use nutritional yeast instead of yeast? So, no, basically. So the idea of the yeast extract, and that is actually the next ingredient that we're going to put in, so we can talk about that now. Just a quick one, Ariel, just in case I missed this question. Ariel says, use a NutriBullet for this job, or does it have to be a hand blender? A hand blender is a lot easier, because with a NutriBullet, it can struggle a bit with thick ingredients. So with the NutriBullet, you know, everything has to kind of like drop down to the bottom where the blade is, and it can spin it around, and if the mixture is too thick, then it can get caught up around the sides, and it doesn't stay around the blade, which is what you want, really. So what you can do is you can blend it, and if it gets all stuck up on the sides, you can take the jug off and tap it, and then that will bring it down, and then you can re-blend it. The same as if you're using something like a jug blender, you might have to open it up, scrape down the sides, and then blend it again. And so, you know, that's one of the reasons why I like a hand blender, is because you just don't have to do any of that, really. Okay, so back to the question about yeast extract. So this is the yeast extract that I use. You might also know yeast extract as Vegemite or Marmite. So basically, this is something that is going to add a huge amount of really dark savouriness to this dish. It's very, very meaty. Whereas with something like nutritional yeast that you were just asking about, it's more cheesy. I mean, it is savoury, but I would say it's like a light savouriness, whereas this is like a dark savouriness. And this is what we're looking for. If you don't have yeast extract at home, I would say that the closest thing to it is a dark miso. If you've got like a dark brown miso paste, then that would be like the closest substitute. The other substitute would be maybe tamari, but you've just got to be careful, because you know you're going to be adding, if you add tamari or soy sauce, sorry, you would be adding more liquid to this. So you have to think that, okay, if you add a bit more liquid to this, then you'll need some more of the dry ingredients. But that's fine, that's fine. But what we're doing with this ingredient is we're adding that salty, savouriness, that stuff. So you want something that's going to do that. and nutritional yeast doesn't really do that. Okay, so pop this in. And just to say as well, if you guys don't like Marmite, totally understand, because I actually think it's disgusting. I actually think it's like the devil's food. But in the recipes, it's brilliant. It's really, really great. So I use this in chili, burgers, you know, shepherd's pie, anything that needs to taste very meaty. I use this stuff. And it works a treat. And you know, as long as you're not using too much, the yeast extract Marmite flavour won't come through as a dominant flavour, just in the same way that the mushrooms won't, because we've got all of these different layers going on. So, and the overall effect is going to be amazing. Okay, so in there I've put 1 to 2 teaspoons of the yeast extract. And the reason why we say 1 to 2 is that with some of these, they can be, you know, a bit more salty than the other ones, so you've got to watch out for that. And I would say, if you're not entirely sure how salty your yeast extract is, just do this recipe with the 1 teaspoon first, give it a taste and see how it is, and then you can always add more. You can't take it away. Okay, so now we're going to pop in some stock powder, and our stock powder that we're using is this one from Marigold. This is the one that I prefer. It's nice and loose. Sue said, Marmite, the one thing I panic upon. That was the one thing. That is a good thing to choose. A good thing to choose, definitely. So you can make lots of vegan meaty dishes then. We're going to add 4 teaspoons of our stock powder into here. It is a lot, because this has salt in it as well, actually. And what we're doing with this mixture here is we're making something that has loads and loads of flavour, loads of saltiness, because in a moment we're going to be adding ingredients that don't have any flavour whatsoever. So they're what I call blank flavours. And so if you're going to be adding something that is going to be a filler, that's going to give body to a recipe, but it doesn't have a flavour of its own, then you need to make sure that the other things have a lot of flavour, just to like balance it out. So I'm making sure that this is mixed in really well before adding our filler ingredients, our body ingredients. Debbie said, that's the best thing about making vegan recipes. You can taste the raw batter without the chance of getting sick. Yes, absolutely. But so the ingredients that we're going to use as our fillers, as the thing that's going to create body and texture to this recipe, is 70 grams of porridge oats and 70 grams of gram flour. Now, just one thing to say about gram flour is that, pardon me, it has quite a disgusting flavour when it's raw. So bear that in mind when you taste the raw batter. It is going to have that gram flour, but you can still check the batter to see if the saltiness is right. But beware. So we've got 70 grams of porridge oats here. So just to say, with the oats, these are quite fine and quite powdery, and that's the difference between porridge oats and something like steel cut oats. So steel cut oats are lovely, but they're better for things like flapjacks, where you want that texture. But with what we're doing today, we want oats that are going to help bind. So the fact that they're powdery, the fact that they're broken up more, that's really going to help us, because it's going to be kind of like the glue. It's going to hold stuff together, and it's going to add a texture. So this is one of the things, well actually this is the ingredient that stops it from being a pasty, pasty burger. Okay, so Priscilla, sorry, I think I missed that information, but can I use any type of mushrooms? Yes, you can use any type of mushrooms. That's absolutely fine. I just used what I had, but I've used chestnut mushrooms. They're the ones that I usually use with this recipe, but any mushrooms that you have to hand. Okay, so we just pop our 2 filler ingredients here. These are the ingredients that are going to give it body, and they're going to give it texture as well. So with the gram flour, I use gram flour because I'm gluten-free. If you want a burger that has gluten in it, then you can just replace the gram flour with plain flour. But please, 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 please use the oats. Make sure that you use the oats, because that is a thing that will give it a really nice texture. And actually, like, when you bite into it, you won't think that they're oats. You won't at all. You'll just see it as texture. And that's what we want. Okay, so this is all mixed in really well, and this is our batter. See, it is nice and thick. Now, what you can do at this point is you can make them into patties, you know, using your hands. Always use wet hands. That's going to help you to make better looking patties, basically. You can even put the mixture between 2 sheets of baking paper, and then you can use a cookie cutter to cut out perfect circles, if that's what you want. If you don't really care about that too much, then we can just get straight to the frying and have burgers that are going to be just like a bit more rustic looking, basically. So pop some oil, just a little bit, into our pan and let it heat up. And then we're going to pop them in, and I'm not even going to worry about making them into patties at the moment. I'm literally just going to drop them in, because this mixture is so thick that you can actually just pat them down in the pan and make your shape in the pan, which is good because this is still like a bit warm, really. So yeah. So Jojo, hello. Oats are great. I use them in my cafe's beet burgers. What is your cafe? What's your cafe? Let us know. Let us know. And I'm sure that we've spoken a long time ago, I think. Yeah, I think you may have even helped me with my TV pilot. You think. Okay, so now we can pop some of this batter in here. And there's a nice sizzle. That's what we want to hear. We want it to sizzle when these burgers go in to the pan, because that's going to sear the outside, and that's all that we're doing with this part of the recipe, is we're searing the outside. We want to brown the outside, and the reason why we're doing that is because of the Maillard reaction. So the Maillard reaction, so I'm just getting my handy tools. The Maillard reaction is when food goes brown, and that's what makes us think that food is tasty. So if you guys have ever had something like a gluten-free bread or cake or something like that, and it's quite pale, which some of the gluten-free breads can be, you know, it says to our brain like it isn't going to be that tasty. So it might actually be perfectly lovely, but our brain says no, it's not. So the Maillard reaction is something very, very important in food. And let me just see if there are any more comments. Jojo says it's in Thailand. Ah, okay. Whereabouts in Thailand? Really, really beautiful country. I absolutely fell in love with Chiang Mai when I went there. Ankita said, do we use yeast in vegan recipes only for the flavour? I've recently turned vegan. Yes, it's only for the flavour. It's only for the flavour. Yeast extract is good for you though. It's a great source of B12. So there is that too. But with my recipes, I mainly concentrate on, you know, the flavour of things. And all of these, you know, added nutritional benefits are a bonus, basically. Okay. So these are browning nicely. You can just, yeah. That's on a good heat. So if you guys have any questions for me, do let me know. Jennifer says, for the freezing process, would you freeze prior to sizzling? No, I would freeze them once they're completely cooked. Once they are completely cooked. Because then you don't have to worry about having to cook out that nasty taste of the ground flour. Jojo said she's in Koh Samui. Oh, lovely. Lovely. I'm jealous. In fact, one of my recent students, Adam, he's going to be opening up a vegan cafe in Koh Samui as well. What are the chances? Monique said, I'm celiac and can't eat oats, so what can I replace them with? Okay, so Monique, in the UK, we can actually get gluten-free oats. And the oats that I'm using today are completely gluten-free. So, you know, I hope that you can get them where you are as well. But if you don't want to use oats at all, then you can use, you know, maybe something like millet flakes. Actually, I'll get them for you. Show you. So something like millet flakes, that would be a really, really good option. You can also get quinoa flakes. They would be a great option too, but with the quinoa flakes, obviously you're going to get that quinoa-y flavour that can be quite dominant and isn't everyone's bag, whereas with the millet, you know, it's more kind of like blank flavour, really. So George says, can I use black beans and crushed walnuts instead of oats? You're pushing the boundaries of substitutions there, but I like it, I like it. Okay, so basically, I wouldn't substitute the oats for the black beans. I would probably substitute the mushrooms maybe for the black beans, but you have to be aware that when you use black beans and you blend them, that's the pastiness that we're trying to get away from. You could leave the black beans whole or just crushed, but then it would be like a different texture. And this recipe is all about texture. It's about getting that kind of like meaty, firm burger that can be so lacking in other vegan burgers. Okay, so these are browning really, really nicely, and they are almost ready to go into the oven. So you can see that I'm just like making them a bit neater, just by patting them around the side. And with the crushed walnuts, yes, you could possibly, but the texture again is going to be different to the oats. The oats are the magic ingredient in this recipe. The only thing I would substitute the oats with, as I said, millet flakes or quinoa flakes, something like that. Jojo said, oh really, put him in touch with me. I definitely will. His name is Adam. He's a really, really, really lovely guy. Gary said, please can I have an opportunity to screenshot your recipe? I'm late to the party today. Oh, well, you can always watch on catch up. You can watch on catch up. So if you guys are watching on your laptop, you can go into the top right corner, which is up there. I don't know if I can point in the right direction of your screen. I'll give it a go. Yeah, you can go to the three dots that are in the top right hand corner and you can click save, and so you can come back to this another time. Once the live is actually over and it's on our feed and it's also in the group as well, then you can click on it and you can save the post and then you can come back to it another time. But we do keep all of them, so you know, if you miss something now, don't worry about it. The beauty of you guys being able to watch it back is that you can rewind things that maybe you've missed, or you know, sometimes I speak too quickly. I know I do. So you might miss something that I say, so you can definitely do that. Tia said, instead of gram flour, can I use normal wheat flour? Yes, absolutely. That is a great substitution. As I said earlier, all of my recipes are gluten-free, but it's much easier to make a gluten-free recipe into a gluten recipe than the other way around. But I'll always try to give you guys that substitution. So yeah, just swap out the gram flour for plain flour, and that will do the trick. Gary said, awesome, thanks. Good. Glad to help. Okay, so let's pop this into our oven. Our oven is on 180 degrees Celsius, which is 360 degrees Fahrenheit, which is gas mark 4. So we'll pop that into our oven. And here's one I made earlier. Of course. So what I wanted to show next for you guys is, you know, these are fine as they are. They are absolutely lovely as they are. They are nice and firm. If I can show you how firm they are. Pretty good, huh? Pretty good. Monique said, gluten-free oats are not easy to find here and they're frightfully expensive. Plus the advice of the Celiac Society here is still to avoid them as they contain a protein almost identical to gluten, and some celiacs still... I didn't know that. Thank you for that information. That's really, really great. What I would really like to know, Monique, is where do you live? What country do you live in? That's really, really good information, because obviously, like, we do get a lot of people come into the show who are celiac and who are gluten-free. So obviously, like, I don't want to be giving them the wrong information and someone getting ill, because I know how horrible that can be. Okay, so we're going to be using our griddle pan. You don't have to do this step at all, but I just wanted to include this because it's quite nice to get the stripes along the burger. So you'll maybe have seen in one of the pictures that I shared earlier today, some burgers with the stripes on, and that is a really, really lovely effect. So you can get that on barbecue as well. We're gonna do them here. Monique said Australia. Also millet would be great, thanks. Good, good, good. I'm really glad that helped you out there. But any type of like gluten-free grain that is made into a flake. So the ones off the top of my head were millet and quinoa, but you might be able to find others as well. Okay. So Paul is... Thank you for helping everybody. That's brilliant. That's really, really good. Thank you. So oven after frying. Yes, I popped it into the oven and it was at 180 degrees. 360 degrees Fahrenheit, gas mark 4, and I cooked them in the oven for about 15 minutes. But obviously it depends on the thickness or the thinness, because if they're quite thin, they're going to cook out quicker. If they're bigger, then they're going to cook out, you know, you'll need a longer time in the oven. The reason why we're putting them in the oven is to cook out the flour. So to cook out that flavour of the gram flour, and also it hardens them up. Actually, let me see if I can show you guys this. So these are the ones that I just put in my oven, and they're still quite squishy. And we don't want them to be squishy. So yeah, we want to get rid of that. You see what I mean? Like, you know, there's still, like, the batter's still raw, basically. But by cooking them in the oven, what we're basically doing is we're getting that gram flour and the oats to cook out, and it will firm up, and that is going to be what will help the burgers to be firm and hold their shape. And in your burger bun, patty, batch, cob, whatever it is, it will hold its shape. Okay. So whenever we're using a griddle pan, we do use a bit of oil, but you use the oil on the food that you're going to be griddling, not the actual pan itself. And the reason why is that when you use griddle pan, if you put oil directly onto it, then the oil that's at the bottom that isn't touching the food will start to burn. And that is just going to create loads of smoke, and, you know, and the smoke alarm's going to go off again, which is always fun, always fun. Okay, so I've just put a little bit of oil on these. Put it on both sides. You can use a brush if you want to. Okay. And we want to hear it sizzle. Again, you know, we want to hear that sizzle. So, you know, I've already heated it to a fairly high heat. So with my hob, it's 1 to 6 and it's on a 5. So it is, you know, near enough as high as it can get. Martin said, what part of the globe are you? This is super idea. Well done. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I'm in the UK. I am in the UK. I'm actually in Sussex. Jennifer said, can't wait to make... I missed that last bit. I think maybe can't wait to make burgers. Good guess. Carol said, learning lots here. I didn't know that about the griddle pan. Okay, good. I'm really glad that I could be of help. So you can just press it down as well. That will help with the griddling process. And leave it there. It's really, really tempting to lift them up and see how they're going and flip them over. But quite often if you do that like too quickly, then you can lift it up and it needs more griddling, and you put it down and it can be like a little bit awry. You know, it's not exactly as it was before. So the stripes aren't as perfect as we want them to be. So I realised that the camera angle has changed again. We've got a bit of a breeze coming in here today. There we go. Is that better? There we go. Sorry about that, guys. Okay, so let's see how these guys are doing. Whoa! Very, very excited about this. Okay. Just doing the other side, and I'm gonna bring over the whole pan. show you guys. Look at those. Look at those. How awesome is that? Really, really happy with how these are working out today. As I said, you don't have to do it, but it's just a nice finishing touch for your burgers. Adrienne said, just logged in from New Jersey. What's the main ingredients? I can only see the right column. Okay, so if you can see them now, we will be posting the written recipe, by the way, in the group. So you will be able to get the written recipe too. But just to go through it again while these guys are still cooking. 1 tablespoon of oil, 200 grams of onions, 20 grams of garlic, 160 grams of mushrooms. You can use any mushrooms that you have, so it's quite a flexible recipe. 1 to 2 teaspoons of yeast extract, and I've said 1 to 2 because some yeast extract can be very salty, some not so salty. 4 teaspoons of stock powder. Salt is optional because you've got to taste it and just see how salty it is. 70 grams of porridge oats, 70 grams of gram flour. If you don't need it to be gluten-free, you can just use regular plain flour. And we set our ovens to 180 degrees Celsius, 360 degrees Fahrenheit, and gas mark 4. So these guys are ready. Let's just see how they're doing on the other side. Beautiful. Beautiful. So we've got a few lines on there as well on the other side, but because it wasn't as flat, the lines aren't so good, so I will be presenting them like this. Let me just get one of our lovely little plates. These are looking yummy. Katie says, looking amazing. They do look really good. I'm really, really happy with these. So this is my burger recipe. Please do ask me any questions you've got, not necessarily about this recipe, but anything else. I'm not sure if I missed any questions because it does go quite quickly. I'm not sure what gram flour is. It like all-purpose flour? Okay, so gram flour is also known as chickpea flour or besan flour. You might know it as that. With the porridge oats, they are very, very fine oats. So yeah, the type of oats that you use for cereal, that's what you need. Lee, thank you for joining us. Thank you for joining us. Yeah, I do hope that you guys try this recipe because, it's not that difficult at all. As you can see, the ingredients list isn't that long, and it's stuff that you can find in most supermarkets now. There's nothing like too kind of like weird out there. I think somebody asked earlier about the yeast extract if they could use malt, which you can definitely use as long as it's that kind of like dark savoury saltiness. That's what you need to use. So whatever you can find to add that flavour, then use that. So do let me know if you've got any more questions. Always happy to help. We've been answering loads of different questions at the moment about substitutions, about back of the cupboard ingredients, how to use them. We're going to be doing some more recipes on food waste as well, because that's one of the things that you guys have said that you want, so we will definitely do that for you. Okay, so guys, thank you for joining me and have a lovely day.